Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, I want to switch gears a little bit. I know that I tend to be the kind of person who comes out and talks a lot about, I like to do real talk, right? Like I really like to be honest with you about what's going on in the industry. I think there are a lot of brands and a lot of companies kind of hiding that things are tough right now. They're trying to make it look like they're thriving and things are going great. And it's really hard to see that if you're one of the many brands who are struggling. And so while I understand that getting the honest news out there and helping you feel like you're not alone if you're struggling is part of my brand, is part of who I am. I want you to feel like you're not in this alone and that you're not the only one going through this turmoil is kind of happening in the economy and everything right now. I also realize that sometimes me just saying, let's push through it and let's figure out how to be strategic so that we can get to the other side together and be here when things get better. I realize that that's not always super helpful. So today what I want to do is just get a little bit tactical with you on how you can not just survive hardship and hard times in our industry, but how you can also thrive so that as the economy and the industry changes in the years to come, you are ready to take advantage of everything that you did during this time period. So I have 3 top tips for you. That's what we're going to go through today. And number 1 is really some basic good business advice. And every single good business book that you are going to read out there is going to tell you that if you're struggling in your business, the first thing that you want to do is take a look at your budget and your expenses. Now, it makes absolute sense that you want to be making more than you are spending so that you are profitable as a brand, right? That's what we all want to do. And I realize as a small business owner myself and as an entrepreneur that that's not always possible. Sometimes we need to be able to spend the money on the website and the contractor and the inventory and the development team and whatever it is in our business so that we can get it moving forward. And sometimes that needs to go on a credit card. Sometimes we need a business loan. Sometimes we need someone to gift us a little bit of money so that we can get there. And I realize that sometimes making sure that your budget is balanced that way, where you're bringing in more money than you're spending, can be really tough, especially if you're a startup and you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out how to rectify that. I will be the first to say at Unmarked Street, we are in year 3. This is just year 3 for my business. And we have yet to really have a truly profitable year. We make really great money, but as a small business owner myself, I wasn't sure in the first year, in year 1, like what I should be spending my money on. And I spend a lot of money on improvement for myself so that I can be a better leader. I spend a lot of money on coaching and advisors so that I can make sure that I'm learning the things that I don't know to make sure that I can grow my business and I'm not just going to stay stagnant for the next 10 years. And so because of that, and because I needed to be able to hire amazing team members to come in and help me with client work, and because we have a website, and because we have so many different little apps that we have Slack, we use Later to schedule a lot of our social media, we use Adobe Illustrator all the time. So we have an Adobe subscription. There are lots of little things that add up. And so at the end of the year, every year, I'm a little bit in the red. It's not like big money that we're in the red, but I have yet to officially turn an annual profit. And so for me, this is also what I'm doing in my business right now. I am very carefully scrutinizing every single dollar that I spend. And that's not to say that I'm not spending any money on these things anymore, because I do still feel like there's a lot for me to learn, and there are people that I need to be able to learn it from. So paying them money to help me learn how to use LinkedIn better, or how to do a better workshop or webinar so that we can get our courses to you in a way that feels more authentic to me and doesn't like subscribe to some way of sales and marketing that I just don't like. All of that is stuff that I still need to learn. So I am still spending money on those things, but I'm being very, very purposeful about it. How much do I think the ROI on this is going to be when it returns back to me? If I learn how to do webinars and courses in a certain way, is there a way that that will return something to me over time? And so when I'm spending money on additional kinds of things like this and I'm looking at it, that's really how I'm thinking about it. And so, but I'm also very much scrutinizing my budget on a weekly, almost a daily basis right now, because it's necessary for me at the end of the year. It was one of my goals. I am going to make a profit this year. I am going to make at least $1 of profit this year. If I can make $10 more than I spent in 2024, that is a huge goal for me because it's a huge win in our checklist of what we need to do as we move forward and grow. So just like me, I really encourage you to be really, really cognizant about what you're spending. And just like me, I want you to really think about the ROI of what it would cost to spend on continuing your education, your learning growth, your team. If you continue spending on those things, what is the ROI that is going to be coming back to you? And how do you put those things at the top of your priority list? I've been part of a couple of different amazing coaching masterminds. And while I'm not paying for all of those high ticket prices anymore, not in 2024, I am still kind of a part of some of these side groups that are a little bit more affordable for me during this time. And one thing that we're talking about a lot is during a recession, if you believe that we're in a recession or not, we are just kind of in a weird funk when it comes to the economy. And so during times like this, it is really important for businesses to figure out how to put SOPs in place. How do you have standard operating procedures? How do you automate some things? How do you bring in people into your company who can maybe hit the ground running, do something for you fast, and then you can kind of release them from your books, right? Like do you hire a contractor who can help you update the SEO on your website so that you get a lot more traffic to your website, but they don't need to become a permanent person on your team? We're talking a lot about that in my mastermind groups. And in my coaching groups, like making sure that you are still hiring the right people to come into your company, take work off your plate so that you can be focusing on your budget, so that you can be focusing on what's next, so that you can be focusing on the future of your company while you're allowing the experts to kind of do what they do. And then you might end up then releasing them. You don't need to hire them full time. You can bring them in for a cost that makes more sense than a full-time salary or needing to provide benefits to a team member. You can bring them in and then have a budget for them and then let them kind of move on and go to a new client. That is really important. The other thing, again, that's just really important is making sure that you are continuing to learn about the things that you feel like you're going to need to know when things kind of turn around and get a little bit better. So again, for me, like I'm trying to learn about all of the things that elevate me and my brand so that when we get to a point where the economy turns around and maybe we have a lot of clients trying to come work with us, we're ready for that. We have systems for that. We have team for that. And we know exactly how we're going to move into working with all of those new clients. So visualizing that, trying to manifest that, making sure that you are then prepared for that by taking action against those visualizations is the number one thing that I can advise to you right now. Look at your budget, figure out what's important. Important is going to be setting the groundwork, planting the seeds. We say a lot in business, or I've heard a lot in business, that we have these seasons, right? And sometimes winter is a great season for rest and for taking a break and allowing what you've already put in place to kind of just work for you, right? Well, spring is a season of you to be planting seeds, for you to be starting to implement some new ideas, but you realize you're not going to reap those rewards until your autumn season, whenever that is. And in our industry right now, we realize that our autumn season for our spring right now might not come for another 12, 15, 18 months. But if you spend the next year planting really good seeds and setting a really solid foundation, you are going to be able to reap the rewards even better when that time comes. So number one, I really encourage you to take a look at your budget and figure out how to make yourself just a little bit profitable. What expenses can you get rid of? What can you take off your plate? How do you get a little bit of time back to yourself so that you can do a little bit more of this seed planting? Are you frustrated by feeling like an outsider in your own industry? You're not alone. I spent years feeling the same way. Are you tired of endless research and you can only learn this stuff by getting a job in fashion advice? Me too. That's why I created the Business of Apparel online course. My years of insider knowledge condensed into video tutorials, demos, and downloads. Learn at your own pace, no fluff. Just key topics like building target profiles and mastering financials. This information is genuinely unavailable anywhere else. Grow your brand, become an apparel industry aficionado, and unlock millions in potential revenue. The value? Over $50,000 with millions potential for your brand. Don't miss out. Sign up for the Business of Apparel online course today at thebusinessofapparel.com/course. Tip number 2 that I have for you is also something that I'm working on right now, and that is honing in on your message and getting it out into the world. So as brand owners and as brand ambassadors, we definitely want to be figuring out what the message, the core message, the mission, the values of our brand are. And we want to be visible, talking about it as much as we possibly can. So how can you rally your network so that they're helping to share your message? How can you tap into people who have podcasts or news spots that you could go on? Can you be on the local news? And can you go out there and get your message out to more people in different ways? Can you get an article in a magazine? Can you write a blog post that can be featured somewhere? There are lots of ways during this time to figure out how to get yourself seen. And what this does for you during this slower time in the economy and in the industry is it allows people to start recognizing you. And so if you've noticed my face all over the place, that is absolutely what we're doing here at Unmarked Street too. I am trying to become a little bit recognized for what we do at Unmarked Street. I'm trying to make sure that people know that we are the company that you come to when you're ready to grow your apparel brand. Now, we have a lot of resources for startups, but we are not going to sell you something that you can't afford. And because we are a high ticket, high end consulting agency, we have a lot of tools that we sell at lower costs for startups. And we have office hours that you can come to so you can tap into me 1 hour a week. But we're not going to sell you a high end consulting package if you're not quite ready for that. And so by getting the message out there, letting people know that these are the places where we live in the industry, that is the important thing for me to be getting out, right? So that when brands are ready to learn a little bit more about growing their brand, they've already started their brand, maybe they're starting to make a little bit of money. They're trying to figure out how to make a little bit more money. Who do they come to? They come to Unmarked Street because we've worked inside billion-dollar brands for the last 20 years of our careers, and we know what it took to get them there because we sat at those executive tables. We learned from those leadership teams. And so now we're able to bring that information to you and really teach you what works. And so that's the information that we're trying to get out. We want people to understand that that's our message. That's where we live. And so when you have dollars to spend, you can come to us for that. And so the same is out there for you, right? Like, how do you get your message out there? How do you get information about your products out there? How do you feature them more? How do you talk about it in an organic way? Can you get on other people's platforms? Can you join them for live streams? What can you do to make sure that as your potential customers are looking for what they might eventually want to buy or spend their dollars on when that becomes available to them, that as soon as that idea comes into their head, they think of you? And we tend to notice that in economies like this, we're not really generating a lot of new customers. You might have some loyal customers that hopefully you've gained because you have amazing fit in your garments, you have amazing construction, and they know that they can come back to you over and over again because they're going to get a really quality garment that's going to last them a really long time and it fits their body the way that they want it to. Those are the best ways to grow brand loyalty inside your company. And so if you've already done that and you absolutely have loyal customers coming back to you, what you want to do is make sure that you keep those loyal customers by continuing to show up for them. But what you also want to kind of recognize is that we might not get a lot of new customers into our space. And what I mean by that is, like, we talk a lot about fast fashion versus sustainable apparel, right? Like, those are kind of the two dichotomies in our industry. And not to say that we're like fighting with each other, but we kind of do butt heads. Like, the philosophies of fast fashion versus sustainable apparel do kind of butt heads out in the world. And so we're probably not going to pull a ton of people in from fast fashion into our sustainable apparel brands during this time. Because the reason people go into fast fashion is because they believe it's cost effective. And I've tried to debunk that a couple different times. If you didn't listen to the girl math episode that we did a little while ago, go back and listen to it. You should ask all of your friends who are shopping fast fashion to go listen to it too, because that is the episode that basically says, you're actually spending a lot more money on your fast fashion than you think. And you're actually spending a lot more money on your fast fashion than if you went to a sustainable apparel brand and bought a really quality piece. But go back and listen to that episode if you want more on that idea. But the likelihood of us pulling those people into sustainable apparel during this time is going to be tough. And so what we end up doing in the sustainable apparel space is we either figure out how to maintain our own customer loyalty or we figure out how to grab market share from other brands, essentially. And this is such a supportive community, and a lot of us know each other. And so I know it's hard to say, like, you want to steal customers from other brands. Like, that's not necessarily what I'm trying to put out there, because I do think that the support of each other is what makes our segment of this industry so amazing and beautiful. And it's one of the reasons that I love working in it. But because you're not going to be able to grab a ton of new customers and bring them over from segments that are kind of controversial to sustainable apparel, you need to consider how maybe you can move customers who are already in the space into your brand. And so by doing more visibility, by getting yourself out there more, by sharing your message more, by having something unique to offer, those are definitely the ways that you are going to grab that market share and hopefully grow a little bit in this time, instead of feeling like you're just waiting for this year to pass until something gets bigger and better. So that's number 2, is get your message out there. Number 3 is something that I am actively doing with our high ticket clients. Now, we have 2 different clients who basically at the end of 2023 said, we need to take a break. We need to put everything on hold. We're at such a good point in our brands. Like, we are working with some amazing clients who are doing amazing things despite how tough everything has been. I am so proud to be part of their brands and to be helping them. And the ability and the humility that both of them had to be able to say, we're in a place that we don't even know how we got here. Like, it was scrappy for us to get to this point. But from here, we know that we need to be better in the way of standard operating procedures, in the way of having a strategy, in the way of being more organized and having better processes. We know that that's the only way that we are going to continue to grow in a way that makes sense from here. And so for both of these clients, we have been taking the last several months, almost the last 6 months, and just figuring out what those are. We've kind of been taking a pause on a lot of development work. We're developing a few things here and there, some key pieces that we knew we were going to need in the line. And so that's kind of running. But instead of doing like 10 new styles per season, we're doing maybe 2 or 3, while we spend a lot of our energy and a lot of our time putting together a strategy for the future. And so what I can recommend is that you take this time to do the same. Putting your 10-year or your 5-year business plan down on paper, knowing what your numbers are going to be over the next 5 to 10 years. What are your sales goals every single quarter for the next 10 years? Do you have that? Do you know how you can go from today, the funding and the money and the inventory that you have on your books? How do you take that, become profitable over the next 5 to 10 years, and then turn that into a goal number? Do you want to make $10 million 10 years from now? Do you want to be a $10 million company? How are you going to get there? Do you know the sales goals and the numbers and the products that you're going to need to make and the timeline on which you are going to need to design them, develop them, and launch them to be able to get to reach those goals. This is the time for you to dream all of that up, to look way far into the future as to what you want your brand to be, and start putting those numbers on paper so that when you hit the ground running, when things turn back around and things get busy again, you have a plan that you are following. You are not scrambling to figure out what it is that you need to do every day. You are not trying to get information to your team in a way that is rushed or feels chaotic. You've already done that work. We've taken this sort of slow time. We've slowed down our development schedule because let's go back to number one. Likely, you are probably developing some products that don't need to be in the line right now. And if it makes sense for you to actually decrease your inventory purchasing budget, so that you can rectify, how much you're spending versus how much you're making, it makes a lot of sense for you to say, we're going to take this 10-piece line plan that we have for the upcoming season and maybe only do 3 of the key pieces. All of a sudden, I am not going to owe as much money to my developers. I'm not going to owe as much money in sampling and development work. I'm not going to owe as much money on my purchase order to buy that inventory. I'm not going to owe as much money to ship it or store it in my warehouse. And so if you're strategic about that portion of your business during this time, you can also be strategic about so many other things. So you're rectifying your budget by doing this. And you are also taking a closer look at how to move forward as a brand in a way that is going to feel easy and feel better when the time comes that you get busy again. And I've written a couple of things about this, but I know it's boring. It sounds boring to be a process-driven company and to have standard operating procedures and who still has a team manual sitting around their office, right? Well, my clients do because I write that for them. And it is super important for them to be able to know this week, this is what we're doing. This is exactly the due dates that we have on our calendar. What is everybody responsible for? What are they responsible for in the next couple of weeks coming up to make sure that we're going to launch on time, we're going to launch on budget, and we're then going to hit our sales goals that we've set. We know every single month exactly how many dollars we need to sell to be able to eventually reach our 10-year goal. And that sounds really minute and detailed. If you need help with that, I am doing that for brands right now. Those are our brand audits that we're doing. And that is some work that will benefit you for the next decade. So if you are interested in figuring out not just how to survive, but to thrive, my top 3 tips again are: number 1, rectify your budget. Figure out where you can stop spending, but don't neglect your need to continue learning and your need to continue hiring the right people to take certain work off your plate so that you can do a lot of other key visualization work during this time. So that's number 1, rectify your budget. Number 2 is get your message out there. Make sure that you are recognized for the type of product or the type of services that you offer in our industry. You want people to think of you when the time comes to spend their money. And number 3 is build your strategy. During this slower time, build out that strategy for what the next 5 or 10 years is going to look like for you. And you'll be ready to hit the ground running when everything is in a much better place, when the industry turns around, and it absolutely will. Everything is cyclical, right? We see this all the time. And this little phase that we're in has been a little bit slower than a lot of us have wanted to see and a lot of us expected to see. But it will turn around. And so are you ready for it? How do you get tactical to make sure that you are ready for that time? If you like this episode, please leave us a review. We would love for you to do that. And if you have any questions for me, you can always leave a comment below this video in YouTube, or you can go to unmarkedstreet.com/contact and you can leave me a message. I'll either answer it for you on my Ask Rachel Anything lives on Friday on Instagram, or I'll also just DM or message you back. I'd be happy to do that. Have a great week ahead, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.